name is Cristina, and I founded Kulana Artist Sanctuary here on the Big Island of Hawaii, which is a version of creative community intended for artists and spiritual seekers to do their thing. So we have cabins and rooms and camping, and everyone basically shares the community space and meditation trails and things like that. And we define creativity relatively loosely. I mean, we say for the artistically and spiritually inclined. So some people like yoga is their creativity, right? Or Carl's thing is growing food. But then other people are specifically, I want to make my living from my painting, or I want to make my living from my writing, or my filmmaking, or my music, or whatever. And that blends really well, because I actually think whatever your creativity is an expression of your spirituality, and vice versa. And it's very interesting, because then you also have totally emerging artists with totally established artists in the same place. Really, people help each other out, and sometimes people partner and co-create things together, and other times people listen and critique for each other. It is an smoke, alcohol, drugs, and drama-free zone, and that makes a certain level of consciousness, you know, and it's not like people can't have a beer out in the world, but in our space, we keep it substance use free, and so that has a certain level of authenticity of interactions with people, and we say that we welcome diversity. So we have, you know, 19-year-olds and we have 70-year-olds, and we have people who consider themselves an artist and people who make art but don't consider themselves an artist, and we have really accomplished people who already do that for their living, and other people who are like, you know, I always wanted to paint and now I'm going to. And we've all co-created it. I mean, the way we set it up is that everyone pays some and pitches in some, and that's how we keep it going. But for me, I think the whole point of the Artist Sanctuary was to grow artists or visionaries, right? So that's the support that we're offering. Like, it's a nurturing place with, you know, the fertilizer of interesting people around, and the kind of time and space to come more fully into your best self. And it seems like a lot of people need that now. In the first maybe 2 years, I'd say, our predominant thing was coming up with guidelines that would make it a sacred space, a sacred, safe space. So I was like, you know, there are bed and breakfasts, there are hostels, there are hotels, there are ashrams. We don't have to be any of those things. We're something else, you know, and it's new. I mean, I couldn't find it, and so as far as I know, there is nothing else like it out there. And when I came to Volcano, which houses a lot of artists, I mean, in the woods, there are tucked many other artists just doing their thing. And there are art galleries, and there's the park, and there's art activities, and there's the little farmer's market. It just felt like, okay, this is our community. There are, I think, 6 or 7 Hawaiian principles. So like being pono is one, where you basically try to be very responsible and ethical and honorable. And Kulana is one of those 7 principles that means basically living your life from the attitude or the slant of joy from within. So rather than being excited or hugely discouraged by what's happening outside of you, you always come back to, I'm creating this. So the slant I'm living from is this sort of grateful, joyful attitude that you create from within, no matter what's going on around you. So that's the name, yeah. In a nutshell, I haven't met a form of creativity I don't like. So really, I do almost everything to varying degrees of play. But then in terms of work, I've always known that I was meant to be a writer / filmmaker, and I'm from New York, so originally I studied writing, and then I became an editor in the world of publishing, which was actually very, very useful training to understand what happens on the other side of the desk. And just started my first novel, which turned out to be a children's novel, and was really excited about it, and wrote in parks and wrote in McDonald's, and, you know, really just had this sense of I'm on my path. And so that feeling is a really exciting feeling, where you're like no longer like, oh, someday, you know, but really just doing it. And I had already been published, but now I was writing books and also nonfiction pieces and also work for hire, which is always very nice because then they pay you first, you know. And so little by little, I was really like, okay, I'm making my living this way. This is great. And my living standard went up. I was like, film was starting to call me. Like, I love Hollywood and I love independent film, and they're entirely the opposite things, right? I love the access to them both, and I love the different kind of experiences you have with both. So I'm doing both, basically. Being on your path is the secret to a happy and healthy life. But is it easy? Is it going to be quick? You know, not necessarily. But I think it can become more and more Zen-like and peaceful if you blend the vision with practical things that allow you to just keep moving forward. And you really celebrate every step of progress you make, because if you're only celebrating by the time you have a bestseller, they were like years before the bestseller maybe. And if you're always like, okay, I'm moving forward here, but look at all these other things that are nothing's happening, they're languishing. So then you're always like beating yourself up instead of going, no, I'm actually moving forward. And I used to be a workaholic. That's one way that you get a lot done. And I didn't want to be that anymore. But when you're really used to it, it's very easy to just, especially if you've taken on some new big thing, to just keep that momentum going. And as soon as I got here, it was like, oh no, you know, that's not how it's going to go. And so I mean, I definitely fought against it for a while because I was like, you know, I mean, I thought I was going to be 6 months here and 6 months in California. I had a lot of balls still in the air, and I had to really simplify and be like, okay, you're just here until it's done. And you just have to be okay with, like, I'm doing this now, and this is what I'm doing, and it's a gift, and I want to be doing it, and the other things that I also want will just need to wait until I can. I think having balance on all fronts and allowing that flow is really the thing that creates a life that at the end you can look back on and go, wow, that was really cool. You know, I did exactly what I wanted, and maybe it shaped differently than I thought, and here were some surprises, but in the end you're really happy with what you created, and then, you know, theoretically you come back and do it again.